President Trump has given himself a new job title. It is the Guardian of the Hormuz Strait. He is the guardian angel, so he says, and he is going to blockade the strait from anything we don't like, and he's going to provide guardian angel status for everybody we do like, and that everything is going to work out fine with that. And oh, by the way, we have blockaded the Strait of Hormuz from the other side, and what could possibly go wrong? There's also some new information coming out of Russia. President Putin has made a statement overnight, along with some other comments from the United States in light of the untimely death of Senator Lindsey Graham. We're going to talk about all that today. And, man, we have a great one to talk to about. We have back Scott Ritter with us again, who is a veteran Marine Corps intelligence officer, former United Nations weapons inspector, is one of the most sought-after military analysts in the business. And we have him today. Scott, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Well, listen, great to have you here, but let's just jump right in. This, we were actually on the air already this morning when President Trump posted this. We were talking to Professor Morandi from Tehran, so he broke the news to him at the same time. But this one really was interesting. The Hormuz Strait, President Trump declares, is open and will remain open. With or without Iran, we are reinstating the Iranian blockade, so named because it is only stopping Iran ships or customers from entering or leaving. All other countries will have fair and open use of the strait. The USA will be, from this point forward, known as the guardian of the Hormuz Strait. And then we get into the loan shark stuff. But as such, as a matter of fairness, we will be reimbursed at the rate of 20% on all cargo ship. President Trump never wants to miss a chance to even theoretically get some money. Interesting, the Iranians and their fees were somewhere around 1 or 2%, but whatever. President Trump goes up to 20. First of all, just on the efficacy of this and the reality, what say you?
Well, first of all, let's just be realistic here. If the United States could have taken control of the Strait of Hormuz, we would have done so in the 39-day war that we fought and lost. I also heard President Trump make threats to Kharg Island. If we could take Kharg Island, we would have taken Kharg Island back in the 39-day war, which we fought and lost. People need to understand that we didn't win that war. We survived that war. We didn't suffer strategic defeat, but all of our goals and objectives, none of them were achieved. Iran, on the other hand, emerged stronger. They survived, first of all, after being, we were told that they were going to go away. They proved that their military resilience and sustainability was greater than ours. We're the ones that ran out of ammunition, not the Iranians. We ran out of air defense weapons. We ran out of long-range precision strike weapons, and we didn't have a solution, and we still don't have a solution. But the problem is the president has a political problem. This Iranian thing's not going to be solved militarily. It's going to be solved politically. And one of the problems he has is Strait of Hormuz. Iran has put in this Strait of Hormuz oversight agency. It was supposed to be a collaboration with Oman, but there was going to be a transit fee charged. Again, the percentages would have been reasonable compared to Trump. This was politically unacceptable for Trump. Trump tried early on to make a play for profit sharing, saying we could go along with this if we were a part of this, but the Iranians said no. So what's happening right now, because again, this is my assessment, Trump can't allow this conflict to slide into full-scale war. First of all, we already tried that and we lost. Nothing's changed in our favor. We don't have enough ammunition at all. Whatever stocks we put up will give us a week or two of surge capacity, and then we run out like we did last time, and we'll be in the same problem. The other thing, too, is, J.D. Vance said, the memorandum of understanding was just a ploy, straight up ploy to buy time for us to get the oil stocks back up. Trump admitted, it's amazing. We have one of the more honest presidents we've ever had, because he at least sometimes refuses to tell a lie because he's incapable of the kind of moderation one would expect from a normal politician. But he said, we had to sign the MOU because we were running out of oil. It was going to be a catastrophe. We had no choice. That sort of acknowledges that we lost the war, at least in the short term. But how do we get the oil? So we bought time, we got oil flowing, got the tanks back up, but they said, we're going to wait and see. Well, now we're waiting and see. He needs a political solution to this. And what he needs is the Iranians to come up with a compromise arrangement where there's a profit sharing for the United States. Now, I said from the very beginning, this would be one of the smartest things the Iranians could ever do, because it would decouple. But the Iranians are probably smarter than I am, because they understand that, you let the camel's nose under the tent, and next thing you know, the camel's in the tent. And if you let the United States get a piece of the Hormuz thing, you lose control over it. and they want full control over it. But this is a gambit on the part of Trump. He's trying to create this is the art of the deal. He's coming in with a counter bargain, and then he's coming in saying that, this is the price you're going to pay, believing that the Iranians will not be willing to pay the price militarily and will be looking for an outlet. Remember, the Iranians are looking for an outlet. Trump isn't doing this based upon pure ignorance. The Iranians took advantage of the temporary cessation and hostilities to sell 60 million barrels of oil. They made a lot of money. The other thing you have to remember is that both Russia and China are part of Team Iran, and they can't allow this to go sliding into long-term instability. They don't want this war. China desperately needs this oil to continue to come to market because China needs this oil to sustain continued economic growth and health. Russia just finished the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum last month, where the message from the Russian president was, we need stability. Stability. Why? We need investments. There are $84 billion worth of investments made in the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. He wants more. In order to get that, he needs stability. You know what the antithesis of stability is? High energy prices. Nobody wants high energy prices. People say, well, isn't Russia making money? Well, 20% of Russia's GDP comes from oil sales. But there's 80% of the GDP that's dependent upon investment and growth. So the driver here isn't energy. It isn't energy. The driver here is stability. And so Russia doesn't need this instability. This instability is bad for Russia. And so Trump knows that high energy prices are bad for China, bad for Russia, and they'll both put pressure on Iran. So Trump's hoping that pressure will lead to some sort of compromise agreement. But what Trump doesn't understand is that Iran can absorb, and China and Russia can absorb more pain in the long term than we can. The Strait of Hormuz is shut down, but see, we're operating under the premise that 70% of Saudi oil production, which is the big player in the game, has been rediverted to Yanbu and coming out through the Bab el-Mandeb Straits. And the shutting of the Strait of Hormuz does not impact this. Well, except something happened today. The Saudis just bombed Sana'a airfield in Yemen, and the Houthi are basically probably going to shut down Bab el-Mandeb. Dmitry Medvedev, the former president and current deputy chair of the Security Council of Russia, has called the Strait of Hormuz Iran's atomic bomb, but he called the Bab el-Mandeb Strait Iran's thermonuclear weapon. If that gets shut together, the Strait of Hormuz, the depletion of global energy will be precipitous. And Donald Trump's going to find himself in the exact same situation he was when he said, I had no choice but to sign the MOU. So this is a big gamble played by Donald Trump. Why? Because he's desperate. We don't have a military solution. There is no military solution. The 18 targets we hit last night are jokes. We're out of targets. We're just striking things we don't even understand. We don't know why we're bombing them. The Iranians don't know why we're bombing them. Right. They're having zero impact on Iran's ability to wage this war. Take a look at the targets struck by Iran. Everybody knows why they're bombing them. They're very effective in their strikes. And over the long term, the Iranians are going to degrade America's military infrastructure in the region, degrade the infrastructure of our allies. And if we choose to escalate to energy targets, they'll eradicate the energy production capacity of the, there they are bombing Sana'a. Do they think that there will be no cause-effect relationship here? The Houthi will respond. And the most effective way of responding is to take down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. I can't promise that that's an outcome. I'm just saying that is a possibility.
Yeah, I actually heard from another source I have that was in Tehran earlier today. A Western reporter said he was told by some Ansar al-Islam members that is something they're given serious consideration to, but they said they may not use it just yet. They want to hold that card for like a decisive play, but it's definitely in their hand. You said that there was no military solution to here. Now, there is some of late that have said, no, actually there is. And one of them was General Wesley Clark, who last week said, hey, you know what? Let's go take the Carter Island, man. I know we talked about that before and didn't do it, but hey, we can use that as leverage against them and hold it hostage was the phrase that he used. Now, I'm asking you this specifically because you can see on the screen here, as a Marine, you see that there was 70,000 Marines landed at Iwo Jima, 180,000 in Okinawa in 1945, 1944. And then you look at the size of these two islands here. And do we have that many Marines to employ against it today? Let's first of all look at that part.
No, we don't. I mean, this is absurd to even bring these two. I don't know why Wesley Clark did this. You know, it's curious. He should probably look at a map. He should probably consult a Marine. To get to Keshem Island, you've got to go through the Strait of Hormuz. Take a look at that long coastline. That long coastline is backed by mountains. Those mountains are riddled with missile launchers. You know, you just need one missile to hit one amphibious warfare. There's a reason why General Berger, who was the former commandant of the Marine Corps, told the Marines, I think in 2019, that we, as a Marine Corps, we have to stop being married to legacy systems like large amphibious shipping, because we put all our resources in one basket. That may work in old school, where you could park a ship off the coast and get the landing party ashore. But now that ship will be struck 100 kilometers offshore by precision missiles that we don't have a defense against. And the closer we get, the more risk we run. We have to shoot those ships through the Strait of Hormuz, to get to Keshem Island. And remember, it's not just about landing them and getting out, unless we want to replay Guadalcanal. Hey, Wesley Clark, talk to a Marine about Guadalcanal. We'll tell you what happens when the U.S. Navy cuts and runs and leaves us without supplies. It's not a good feeling to be abandoned on an island. So you want to put Marines on Keshem Island, knowing that the Iranians can shut down the Strait of Hormuz logistical lifeline anytime they want to, and those Marines now will be left hanging. Plus, we don't have enough to occupy the island, which means we'll be in constant battle. And again, look at a map. Gosh, Wesley, I wish I could help you, pal. Look at a map where Okinawa is. Tell me where the Chinese mainland is from Okinawa, how far away it is. It's pretty far away, right? But now imagine the Chinese mainland right up tucked against Okinawa with long-range artillery and other systems able to come in and bombard Okinawa. Do you think that changes the dynamic of the battle a little bit, Wesley? Because it does. It changes everything. Keshem is too close to Iran. Keshem will be under continuous fire suppression from the Iranian government, from the Iranian forces. No landing force will succeed. It will be hit from the very beginning. It will be cut off from logistics, and we will have to withdraw. And I don't even want to talk about going to Karg Island, because we got to get past Keshem Island to get to Karg Island, again, with the sustainability issues. Let's say we somehow magically, boom, because, I think President Trump's been watching too many computer games, and we game the system and put our amphibious ready group right there in the Persian Gulf, and we land a Marine battalion landing team on Karg Island. Well, let's stop looking about Iwo Jima. Let me bring another island in called Koh Tang Island, May 1975. We put a battalion landing team on Koh Tang to try and, because we thought there were U.S. sailors from the Mayaguez. There weren't. There were 300 to 500 Khmer Rouge dug in. We got the snot kicked out of us. Read the battle. It didn't end well for the Marine Corps. 8 out of 11 helicopters that on the initial landing party were shot down or so heavily damaged they couldn't be reused. We lost, scores of Marines dead, Marines on the beach, Marines in the water, swimming for their life. In the end, we were compelled to do a nighttime evacuation under fire because the Marines were in danger of being overrun. Marines who don't panic under fire left 3 Marines behind. We left an M60 crew behind because failure of leadership. We failed to count them all in because it was so confusing, because they're under fire, we're in danger of being overrun. And those 3 Marines were later captured and executed by the Khmer Rouge. It's a moment of shame for the Marine Corps. Do we really want to replay that scenario? Because that's how Karg Island will play out. We will try to put a Marine battalion landing team there. We will make initial successes. We're going to lose more people going in than it's worth. It's going to be impossible to reinforce, and we're going to have to make a desperate move to get them out. Why would we do this to begin with? Wesley Clark, with all due respect, doesn't know anything about what he's talking about. If you want to talk about Marine Corps stuff, talk to a Marine.
Yeah, but that's what we're doing here today, and you've proved why. Let's go to back to the original topic here. I think you have basically shut that door. That is an insane idea. Don't do it. But President Trump, though, you talked about him telling the truth on some things. Other things, though, maybe not quite so much. Here he was this morning talking about this guardian angel thing, but then adding a little bit of information that's interesting, shall we say, about negotiations.
Well, we're taking over the strait. They have nothing. They've got nothing. So something that nobody knows, yesterday they had an 11-hour meeting. Everything's 11 hours with these guys. You can't settle a one sentence in 1 hour and 1 minute. And everything was agreed to yesterday. And they leave the room. They call back and they say, we had to make a couple of changes. I said, changes? They got to make changes? We're not going to make changes. always changes. They just, they're professional negotiators. That's all they are. I don't even call them good at it. They haven't gotten anything. They got nothing from me. We hit them very hard last night. But we had a deal. What nobody knows, we had a deal. It was a done deal. And then they broke it. They always break it. We've had 10 deals with these people, and we're gonna keep the strait, and we'll probably run it. We'll become the guardian of the strait, and we should be reimbursed for that. When we do that, we're going to be reimbursed because the other nations are very wealthy. They're on our side.
So what do you make of this claim that 10 times we had a deal? And last night on a separate interview, he said, yeah, we had a complete deal, and then they totally walked away from it and changed it. Do you say that's true?
Oh, he's a liar, straight up liar. Now, he may not understand that he's lying, but
that's the scary scenario.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Professor Mirande's thing. Maybe he answered this, but the notion that the United States is in direct contact with the Iranians is an absurd notion. I don't believe that there's direct connectivity between the American negotiating team and the Iranian negotiating team, which means whatever is being done through an intermediary. Trump, the Iranians have often said that he's negotiating with himself. So what I believe is happening is that Donald Trump sits down with the intermediaries and dictates the American position. And the intermediaries, after listening, double checking, say, we understand your position. And Trump says, that means they agree. No, it doesn't. It just means that we hear you. But now we got to go talk to the Iranians. And they come back and they say, well, the Iranians have some things. And Trump's like, well, wait a minute. We had a deal. You didn't have a deal. You had a deal with yourself. That's it. But there's no deal with the Iranians. Look, the Iranians have made their position from clear from day one, and they haven't yielded on anything, nor will they yield on anything. But again, I go back. I believe this is a ploy by Trump. Look, Colonel, you know this. He is the master of hyped up rhetoric. He's been saying stuff like this from the very beginning. How many times have we won the war? How many times have we eradicated them? Everything's working masterfully. It turns out we didn't bomb anything. I mean, we blew up some stuff, but the Iranians didn't blink. They were rebuilding stuff immediately. They have a plan for everything. I told people this. The Iranians were ready for this war. They had evacuated anything of value from sites before they were blown up. And then just a matter of pouring concrete, laying brick, and you got a new building. Same thing with bridges. Bridges will be repaired. That's just the way it is. Trump is being lied to by his military people, or what is, I believe, a possibility. He's just a master of chaos. Because there's a player in here, there are two players in here that maybe we're not, that the media is overlooking. And those are China and Russia. We're in a race right now. It's a race between the political consequences, because, again, let's just set it up. In 1992, James Carville, who was an advisor to President, or then Governor Clinton as he ran for president, put a yellow sticky note up on the war room of the Clinton campaign, reminding the presidential hopeful to stop talking about foreign policy and things like that. It's the economy, stupid. That's the only thing that matters. It's the economy, stupid. And right now we're in a literal race right now on whose economy is going to be impacted the worst. Can the United States starve China? Now, before people say, well, no, obviously they can't. Understand this. Trump admitted that, he signed the MOU because we were out of gas, out of oil. J.D. Vance said, yeah, well, the MOU is only good until we get our stockpiles up to where we want them. So the fact that we're doing this now is on an American-driven timeline. We made the decision. Trump made the decision to act now, which means that he has picked a calendar moment that he thinks can achieve objectives. Now, he's been wrong in the past. I'm not saying this is a guarantee of success, but I think that the amount of oil that's been set aside to stabilize, the American economy has been, put on one side, and the amount of oil China needs to stabilize their economy and to grow is out there. And we believe we can outlast the Chinese. We believe that we can get the Chinese to come in and tell the Iranians, you have no choice but to accept a compromise deal here. Trump doesn't get 20%, but Trump gets 2%. That's the gambit here. This is about getting the Chinese and the Russians to pressure the Iranians to give the United States a share of the Strait of Hormuz so that Trump walks away with a victory saying it's not an Iranian strait, it's an American strait, even if it's only 2%. I think that's the play that's being done here. The same thing with Russia. Again, Vladimir Putin is looking for long-term stability. The most destabilizing environment for investments in Russia is high energy prices. Well, that combined with continued Ukrainian drone attacks, but we can talk about that later. Those are diminishing and Russia's got that under control. But the high energy prices, that's bad investment climate. And Russia has long-term strategies that are contingent upon growth scenarios, and growth scenarios required stability. And so I think the United States is also betting on Russia putting pressure on Iran to accept some sort of compromise deal to get the strait opened up with an American finger in the pie. That's the game I think is being played right now.
And let's look at the Iranian side of this, because they seem.
And Danny, we have some a breaking post, should we say, from Arachi right here.
Okay, so he said, the president is absolutely right. Whoever provides secure and safe passage to commercial vessels through the strait should be compensated for this service. Iran has always been the guardian of the strait and will remain so forever. 20%, of course, will be too much, will be fair. So now we got a price war going on. We're saying, hey, we'll do it for 2% instead of his 20%. We'll see how that's going to work. But even before he said this, that I think it's interesting. It shows the media, the battle that's also being waged at the same time. Earlier today, after President Trump made this initial statement, the Iranian not foreign ministry, the military spokesman came on to give his view of what Iran thinks about Trump taking control of the strait.
We will under no circumstances allow the United States to interfere in the management of the Strait of Hormuz, and we will not allow it to do so. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran will deal forcefully with any disruption to the passage of commercial vessels and oil tankers by the invading and pirate U.S. military outside the route designated by Iran, and without the permission of the armed forces and the powerful actions of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the Iranian army in recent days are evidence of this claim. The leaders of the countries in the region are warned that any cooperation with the United States and any logistical support for that country's invading military will be regarded as war against Iran's sovereignty and national security. And if the war spreads across the region, the flames of war will engulf all the countries of the region.
You talked about President Trump maybe trying this gambit of saying all this stuff so that he can put his finger on the scale and maybe get some agreement. But it sounds like the Iranian side is saying, yeah, no, we're not going to play that game. And there's some credibility to his argument. He said there, if you want to play games with that, we have demonstrated that we'll attack ships that don't come through with our permission. And the fact that in this last one here, he just said other countries, the fact that even Oman, some of their territory was hit in the last strike shows that Iran is nobody is off limits for them if they feel like their interests. So the big question is, if it's a gambit, who's going to come out on top, the Iranian side or the Trump side?
Well, I mean, first of all, we're talking about politics. So, a political victory may not look like an economic or military victory. We have to keep that in mind. It's essential for Donald Trump to be able to say that the United States has attained a modicum of leverage over shipping. There's a path. I'm not. First of all, I agree with the Iranians. They're in the stronger position, but I do believe that the United States is prepared to drag this thing out until there is pressure on the Chinese economy, and that the Chinese pressure will then be felt by the Iranians either directly or indirectly through Pakistan, and also on Russia. And Russia will also pressure. The Iranians have they've said this is under Iranian control, but we know just prior to this. The reason why they bombed Oman is that the Omanis broke the agreement. The Omanis were supposed to have set up a southern route through Oman, and then there's the Iranian route. But everything was supposed to be coordinated through Iran, and there were supposed to be fees collected. And the United States had gone into Oman and was trying to play a game for politics purposes to get ships going through there that were going to bypass the Iranian control mechanism. And Oman went along with it, and the Iranians view that as betrayal. But let's go back to the Oman. The concept of Omani-controlled southern corridor. Right off the bat, while it has to report to Iran and has to pay fees to Iran, it's an Omani-controlled corridor. that's a deviation from what the Iranians just said when they said now it has to be total control. So right off the bat, there's a potential for at least going back to that agreement. And then rather than Trump having a deal with Iran, which isn't going to happen, Trump has a deal with Oman, where Trump gets a percentage of the Omani take of the fees. This is the kind of scenario here. It doesn't change anything. Iran is still in 100% control realistically, but it gives Trump the ability to say, I got something out of this. Now, the average American will look at it and say, what did you really get? The answer is nothing. But he'll be able to say, great victory. America now has leverage on the strait. I'm just hypothesizing here that is a potential path because it's the only thing that makes sense. I mean, Donald Trump's coming with an absolute position. The Iranians have come with an absolute position. And this is going to be linked to which side folds first based upon it's the economy, stupid, the economic pressures. And Trump is gambling that Iran will be placed under pressure from Iran to achieve a compromise solution. And a potential compromise solution would be something that I outlined, something that gives Donald Trump a superficial, finger in the pie while Iran retains actual control. Whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. As we both know, this could change dramatically with the if the Houthi decide to shut down the Bab el-Mandeb. That accelerates timelines in a way that may not have been.
It certainly could. And even without that, though, you talk about it's a gamble. I think that's the best way to put it, because theoretically it could potentially have some success, but the chances seem awfully low. And President Trump was aware of just how high the stakes are in this gamble about 2 weeks after the signing of the MOU. He said this in the immediate aftermath. And in an interview about 2 weeks later, I think it was on MSNBC on the July the 2nd, he was asked basically to explain why he decided to sign this MOU. And he said there's a certain president in the past he did not want to be like.
I've been the best president in the history of Israel. And they acknowledge, and by the way, in Israel, I think I was at 99% or something. But Joe, you can't let Iran, whether it's Israel, the Middle East or not, you can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon. I always said, I don't want to be a president with a depression on his resume. I don't want to be Herbert Hoover. Of almost all presidents, and some have been bad, some have been good, very few have been great, but I never want to be Herbert Hoover, because Herbert Hoover was the president that probably took us into the Great Depression, the greatest depression, led the whole world there.
So, I mean, if this thing doesn't get open soon, who look at the reserves China has. Look at what Iran can do on its own, because it's self-contained on so many things. Who's got the better ability to endure? And then, better question maybe, who is the most vulnerable that can't stay very long? Are you concerned about that outcome, about a depression?
Of course, I'm concerned about it. I mean, before we came on air, we were talking about where I was this past week. I was down in Washington, D.C., visiting my daughter and her husband, who just gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. And we're doing planning for the future, bank accounts, et cetera, that will come to maturity when it's time to go to college. But all this planning, they just bought a home. We're talking about equity and how that, how they can, down the road, sell, reinvest equity, get a bigger home, to deal with a growing family. All of this is contingent upon economic stability here in the United States. None of these plans reach fruition if we go into a Great Depression. The viability of sustained employment is a problem. The value of the dollar, all the economic factors, go into free fall. I'm extraordinarily concerned about this. This is why I pay a lot of attention to this. And I don't believe the United States has a strong hand. But again, we have to understand where Trump is coming from. He's not coming from a position of strength. We lost the war. No other way to put it. We lost the war. And now he's trying to renegotiate an outcome or negotiate an outcome premised on the political notion that we won. He's trying to sell victory to the American people. But you can't put lipstick on that pig. We lost the war, and we lost it badly. economically especially. This is why he said, I had no choice but to sign the MOU. And so I think that this is an act of desperation. This is, two scenarios come to mind. This could be, Pickett's charge. People understand what happened there. Longstreet's desperate bid to break the Union center. But when it failed, that was it. Lost. It could be, the Yamamoto, Japanese battleship that sailed, sorted out of Japan to try and take on the American fleet off of the Philippines. Got sunk coming out there because it just couldn't survive. A big battleship looked good, unable to finish the fight. This could be the German, Battle of the Bulge, sending the troops in a desperate bid to break through to get to Antwerp, take the fuel, and break. None of them had a snowball's chance in hell. This could have been Custer at Little Bighorn. None of these had a snowball's chance in hell, and yet the leadership of each respective side made a decision that this is what we're going to do because we have no other choice. We are losing. We have lost. We have to take this gambit now because there is no other alternative. What we're seeing here is an act of desperation on the part of President Trump. Absolute desperation.
Scott, it's one thing for President Trump, who has no military experience at all. All his experience was in real estate and television, so he knew all those kind of things. He knew nothing about foreign policy, military affairs, et cetera. But it's another thing when some of these fiction or fantasy ideas may become. And I just talked to you about Wes Clark a second ago. But there's another one, former General McKenzie, who also has some ideas that doesn't seem to accept that this is a lost cause.
Iranians generally only respond to military force and to extreme pressure. Look, we're not talking about regime change here. What we're talking about is modifying the views and actions of an extreme hardline regime. That is possible. We have the capability to do that. That capability is resident in the U.S. military, should the president elect to employ it. That would include opening the Strait of Hormuz, maintaining the Strait of Hormuz open, and in fact seizing Karg Island, should we elect to do that. And I would just say as an aside, that's something we should think about doing because possession of Iranian soil would be a significant factor in future negotiations with Iran.
I personally was shocked when he made that list that somehow the possession of Karg Island would be a negotiating position that would cause Iran to submit. But man, when he's saying, yeah, we have resident right now, we can just go and take Karg Island. And you said it at the top of the show. If we could have done that, we would have never gone to the ceasefire in early April. What is he talking about?
Generals, it's interesting now because normally you see this with Strategic Command. A lot of the generals who command Strategic Command who did the nuclear war planning and were preparing to fight nuclear wars. And while they're the commanders, they're like, the United States has a robust nuclear deterrence, but if needed, we will be able to engage decisively against any threat and prevail. And as soon as they leave, they go, yeah, we can't win a nuclear war. This is insane. We got to go down to zero. There could be no. General Butler is an example of that. A man who was the head of Strategic Air Command, I believe, and came out and said nuclear war is insane. Can't fight it. Can't win it. We need to get rid of it. Very rarely do you get a former commander going, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's have a nuclear war. They walk away from it. But here we have a case where McKenzie, I believe, was a CENTCOM commander, and he knows the area. Normally, and I believe right now that the reason why we didn't take Karg Island is that the people who are CENTCOM commanders responsible for signing on the dotted line said we can't do it. The bottom line is, Mr. President says, take Karg Island. Can't do it. Not with these resources. You want me to take Karg Island? I'm going to need 300,000 troops to go in at Chabahar and secure the Strait of Hormuz and hold the Strait of Hormuz while we project power in. We're going to need sufficient air power to keep an air umbrella over the depth of Iran to keep missiles from hitting our ships as they go through a very narrowly defined strait. And remember, it's not just about getting Marines through and taking an island. Hell, Marines take casualties. We're famous for building monuments to our dead. But I came into the Marine Corps in the 1980s where we embraced maneuver warfare, saying that we're never going to do that again. We're going to fight smart. Well, fight smart is what General Berger said. You don't put all your Marines in one basket. And so we take the USS Tripoli or whatever ship we have and put it through the Strait of Hormuz. We're going to lose that ship and the 900 Marines on that ship. Now, what do we take Kharg Island with? He just lost a battalion landing team. That's the reality of it. McKenzie has no clue what he's talking about. We can't, we cannot control the strait. It's impossible. If we could have, we would have.
Yeah.
Remember this. Do you remember that Isfahan raid that happened?
Yeah.
Where the C-130s got trapped and the little birds got burned up, and everybody's like, what the hell is going on here? That was the last act of desperation. Prior to that, you had President Trump talking about lighting them up. We're going to change their civilization. We're going to take Kharg Island. We're going to seize the Strait of Hormuz. The same rhetoric you're hearing today. And all of that failed. The people came back and said, can't do it. Can't do it. Got shot down one after the other. One of the realities is that we lost our long-range strike weapons, and now our Air Force was being compelled, our air power was being compelled to actually close with the Iranian territory, and the Iranian air defense wasn't destroyed, started shooting down our airplanes. And we went, wait a minute, this is a game-changing moment. So they did that last act of desperation to, get some sort of leverage, like, Isfahan nuclear stockpiles. Didn't work. And Trump at that point in time had no options left, had to basically quit the fight. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. McKenzie, look, I don't want to, I don't want to malign him or anything, but understand he's the head of the Citadel right now. All right. That's a Institute of Higher Learning that, I'm sure he does fundraising. I know that presidents of university do a lot of fundraising. They go out there and they kiss the rings and they shake the hands and they do all this stuff to raise money. His job right now is to inspire confidence in donors. The donor class is the most ignorant class in the world because they basically donate money to things that make them feel good. So McKenzie's job right now is not to tell them the truth because the truth would make them feel bad. McKenzie's job right now is to be a cheerleader of false hope, because when he goes on TV like this, his job isn't to sit there and articulate wisely about geopolitics and stuff. His job is to raise money for the Citadel. Okay. The board would not let him go forward and make crazy statements like this unless they felt that it was playing to a constituency that will continue to invest in the future of the Citadel. So his job is to go out there and parrot stupidity because there are no consequences. He doesn't have to attend the funerals of anybody who dies because of decisions made by President Trump. And notice that his solutions had no details. So it's very easy for him to say, I would have done it differently. But see, he didn't commit to anything. He didn't commit to how he would do this. He just said, we should do this. We can do this. But then when it's executed poorly and it fails, he can say, not me. That's on Hegseth. That's on,
they just didn't do it right. I would have done it differently.
They didn't do it right. Bradley Cooper did it. He's a Navy guy. You let a Marine run it, we would have been able to take Kharg Island.
Indeed.
I don't know. I'm just saying that this is the stupidity of politics.
Yeah, on graphic display there, and it's just very disappointing, especially for those who go to the Citadel. But I'll leave that for another day. Listen, last bit of time here, I want to shift over to another region where there's another war going on, where you have probably even more expertise, and that is in the Russia-Ukraine war. I'm going to start off, first of all, with Vladimir Putin, who made some comments earlier today about what may be happening next, because there's been lots of claims here, and you're going to see some here in a minute, that the tide is turning, that it's going in the direction of Ukraine, that Russia has been spent. They've culminated maybe even on the front line. And so now is the time to start striking deeper inside of Russia. The West should use maybe even their airspace to attack into it. And Vladimir Putin had a message for that today.
They are creating momentary problems with oil products, but the situation will improve over time. This also affects Crimea. Work is underway to create a supply chain that would be difficult for the enemy to reach. Our responses will always be symmetrical. Wherever they try to strike Russian territory, we will respond symmetrically, only several times more powerfully. The enemy will feel it, they already do, I hope, and they will continue to feel it on an increasingly larger scale.
And so what do you think he means there by an increasingly larger scale? Because lots of concern is that Russia may be giving serious consideration to striking not just to elsewhere in Ukraine, but to the locations where these drones and missile factories and other things in Western Europe are located. What do you think?
Vladimir Putin is in the business of winning this war, but winning this war in a way that benefits Russia long term. And we know this because he said, I'm not looking for a ceasefire because it's a temporary solution. We need to address the root causes of this conflict, or else we risk the inevitability of the conflict reemerging 5 years, 10 years down the road. That's not long-term stability. Russia needs this war to end finally on terms acceptable to Russia. The root causes of the conflict have to be addressed. This means that the current Ukrainian regime will not be in power. Zelensky will be dead or driven, arrested. Syrskyi, Zaluzhny, Budanov, all these people, they have very short futures. This is just a statement of fact. Vladimir Putin at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum spoke about denazification, and he said, we know what this means. It means the total eradication of Banderist ideology. And Russia's not on a timeline, though. There's never been a Russian calendar. There's never been a moment where Russia says, we have to do this by this date. That's been a Western thing, the pressure on people like me to come up with calendar dates. That's not a game Russia plays. They deal with objectives. Russia, I will just tell you, I just came from Russia. I was in the Donbass. I was in Zaporozhye. I couldn't go to Kherson because of drone activity. Very dangerous. Crimea was cut off. The Shamgar Bridge had been blown up. Couldn't cross it. To pretend that it's not a serious situation is ludicrous. The city of Melitopol was out without electricity and water for days. Gas stations were shut down, sandbagged up because of the danger of Ukrainian drones. This is real. The Highway of Death was called the Highway of Death because it's littered with the carcasses of vehicles and civilian vehicles, cars, trucks that are being struck by Ukrainian drones. My convoy on the way out was struck by Ukrainian drones. It's real. I mean, there's no doubt about this, but there's no panic on the part of the Russians. They have the situation 100% under control. We need to understand that this environment that we have, this information environment, is a ploy on the part of the West. It's information warfare being orchestrated by British intelligence, American intelligence, in coordination with Ukrainian intelligence, supported by the Europeans. The goal and objective is to create the impression in the lead up to the 20 September State Duma elections of Putin's weaknesses, Putin's frailty, that Russian victory is not inevitable. In fact, Russia could lose this, that the Russian economy isn't going to thrive. There is a depression. There's going to be an energy crisis. They deliberately hit places so they can get the photo op. You saw this at the G7 meeting when the Ukrainian FP1 drone, actually the Ukrainian FP1 drone didn't achieve the result it did. What happened is an FP1 drone was coming in to strike the Moscow refinery, and a Pantsir surface-to-air missile came under it, and it was the Russian Pantsir missile that struck the oil tank, blew it up, and the lid flipped in the air. And everybody goes, "Ooh, Ukrainian drone attack!" Nah, that was Russian air defense. The Ukrainian drone hits with a 60 kilogram warhead. It goes pop, that's right there. Boom! That is the Russian air defense missile hitting the tank. It's not a Russian drone, a Ukrainian drone. And the thing is, that tank fire was put out, and there's nothing else to. I mean, this was a non-event, literally a non-event. It causes a hiccup. It causes the Russians to have to do certain things in terms of banning the sale of diesel globally, so you can maximize diesel availability in country in time for the harvest. People don't talk about that, but diesel is something that the combiners use. Also for the trucks, for things of that nature. But there is gas. The Russian gas reserves today are the same as they were before. Russia just doesn't want to eat into their gas reserves. The gas lines that you see in every place but Crimea, they don't exist anymore. They'll happen. They'll blow up a refinery in Samara. They'll know exactly which, because each refinery is linked to a Russian company that's linked to distribution centers, so they know which gas stations receive the refined product. And then they just sit there and they wait. And next thing you know, there's a line because there's a limitation. The Russians haven't made the adjustment yet. And so there's no gasoline coming in. There's a line of people waiting for gas, and people take pictures of it and they go, "Oh my God, the Russians are in panic." Come back 3 days later. The line is gone. Why? Russia reallocated resources. The gas is there. The crisis is over. And that's what's happening right now is a reallocation. This is an information operation designed to make Russia look weak. It is causing temporary inconvenience for Russia. Russia has to make the adjustments, but Vladimir Putin is literally not panicked at all. Now let's flip it over, because this is about Ukrainian drone war, drone dominance. We're told the Ukrainians are just doing everything with drones. Hell, they best drones in the world. The problem is that that's just not the case. Ukrainians are having great success because they are flooding the zone literally with tens of thousands of Western provided drones. And when you come in with mass, and much of these drones have good technology, AI terminal guidance, they use Starlink connectivity to make it hard to jam. So there's going to be successes, and they are enjoying successes. But when I spoke to Dmitry Rogozhin, he's the former CEO of Roscosmos, and he is the ring swarms of drones for the second consecutive day. I was in Moscow when that happened. Swarms of drones. The Russian people just, it's Mielich. That's just a loose change. It's nothing. There was no panic, nothing. The Russians will adjust to this. Moscow doesn't look like that. It's absurd in the extreme. But Rogozhin was sitting there talking about, some of the Ukrainian, initiatives, American-backed. For instance, the Hornet is a brainchild of Eric Schmidt, the former head of Google, who funded it, created the company that puts it out there. The Hornet problem has been resolved. The Starlink connectivity, Starlink sectors are shutting down right now. Let's not talking about it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about the reality that Russia has a solution to the Starlink problem, and that solution is being implemented. And the Ukrainians at this juncture don't have anything to offset it. They'll come back. The Rogozhin predicted they'll come back with mesh technology, it's internet connectivity that'll allow the Ukrainians to do some operations deep. The Russians already have a solution to that, and they're working the solution out, building it. I was in the Russian drone research centers talking to them about this solution. They're talking about their production plans. It's just a matter of producing to scale, getting it deployed to the troops that need it, and it's done. This drone war is something totally different. It's very dangerous, very bloody. The Russians talk about how effective the Ukrainians are. They have a lot of respect for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are inflicting casualties, not 25 to 35,000 a month. That's just crap. But they're killing people, hundreds a month. There's no doubt about it. The Russians are taking casualties. The Russians are killing 25 to 35,000 Ukrainians a month, however, and that's real. The Ukrainians know it. They're running out of manpower. The Ukrainians are surging in drone forces. They are unable to build enough infantry forces. And when they do, they sent them on futile counterattacks where they get slaughtered. So the Ukrainians have a tactic called the drone wall. They come in and they'll forward deploy these drone attack posts, and they'll just flood the zone with drones. The problem is they're flooding the zone with drones where the Russians have ISR overwatch, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance overwatch. Here is where the Russians have an AI advantage. They're better at this than anybody in the world. We've been focusing on AI, on text analysis, ChatGPT, and things of that nature. The Russians have been doing it on command and control, basically synthesizing images and the ability to assess images real time and go into databases and look at things and have prediction and also immediate analysis. And one of the things the Russians are doing right now is they're plotting out where these Ukrainian drone command posts are. The Ukrainians are losing 8 to 10 command posts a day. Each command post has 10 or more drone operators. The drone operators take 4 weeks to get the basic training, another 6 months to become good at it. And the Ukrainians are losing 80 to 100 drone operators a day. 80 to 100 drone operators a day are being lost by the Ukrainians. This is the reality. So even when the Ukrainians get a drone wall put up there, that drone wall is immediately vectored. There's a unit in Russia called Rubicon. Read about it. Even the Ukrainians acknowledge when Rubicon shows up, it's over. Because Rubicon comes in and kills all the drone operators. That's what Rubicon does for a living. And all the Ukrainian drone operators are dying, and they're hard to replace. The technology that everybody's relying upon. New York Times just published an article talking about, a secret German factory somewhere in southern Germany producing these high-tech German drones with AI and all this stuff. Well, read the article. It's not a secret German factory. It's Helsing SE. We know the drone they're producing, HF-1. The thing about the HF-1, and 4,000 were provided by the Germans in 2024. About 2,000 were attempted to be used in 2025. The rest are in the warehouse. The Ukrainians refuse to use it. The AI doesn't work, and there's a very high failure rate on launch. What does that mean? If it fails to launch, I just told you, the Russians have ISR surveillance dominance. That means they're looking at AI is looking for any deviation, instantaneously picking up a deviation and then targeting it with Fab 500s, Iskanders, you name it. So the Ukrainians are good at finding windows of vulnerability in the ISR link. So they will have a period of time where they can leave their cover, assemble their drone, prepare the drone, launch the drone, and get back. Because what you don't want to be is seen. If you're seen, you're dead. This is why they're losing so many, because the Russians are seeing them as they launch their drones. So if you have a drone, you come out, you've timed it. You're going to assemble it. You're going to power it up. It's got AI that's a little bit more complicated. Fails to launch. You're now in the middle of freaking nowhere. I mean, exposed. You might get another shot. Recycle, fail to launch. 75% failure to launch rate.
Wow.
Those Ukrainian drones are destroyed and the operators are destroyed. The command post is destroyed. That mistake cost a dozen lives. And this happened over the Ukrainian special forces who operate these things will literally not use these drones. Now there's a new drone, the XF2 or something of that nature, an X-Wing drone that, again, people like Gilbert Doctorow are selling as, this is high-tech German cutting edge stuff. It's an analog of the Russian Lancet, which was available early on in 2022. It's, it's the same thing, but worse because again, it doesn't work. Ukrainians will not use it. Ukrainian Special Forces says we don't want it because failure to launch means instant death. If the thing doesn't work, Colonel, you've heard this about the AK-47, the M16. I mean, everybody loves the M16. Hell, I loved it on the rifle range. I was an high expert every time I shot because when that M16 is clean and I point and I aim, it hits what I'm shooting. Wow, it's wonderful. Wind blows, dust comes in, jams. I'm dead. Meanwhile, the AK-47 gets thrown in a river, has gravel and dirt and mud sludge through it, and they wake it, shake it, chamber, and shoot, and it shoots every single time. The Russian drones work every single time because the Ukrainians have ISR too. They have Russian intelligence. They have American intelligence looking for these things. But when the Russians find the window of vulnerability, they come out, load, launch, get back in. They're safe, and now their drone goes in and kills. Russia is winning the drone war, and if you're winning the drone war, you're winning the war. This is why Russia is advancing. Scott, they're only advancing a couple kilometers a day. I mean, how could a snail could advance further than the Russian? Well, a snail doesn't have to fight through the gray zone of drone death. This is the reality. There is a gray zone. For a Russian unit to advance a kilometer means that it has already advanced 20 to 30 kilometers or more through a gray zone of death. That means that the Russians have to achieve drone dominance over the gray zone and then project that drone dominance onto the Ukrainians, which they're doing across the entire battlefield. There's not a single place on this battlefield where the Ukrainians have the strategic initiative. Yes, they launch counterattacks. They go, they punched 10 kilometers deep into the Russian lines. No, they didn't. They punched 10 kilometers deep into the gray zone, and then they all died. And then the Russians came in, swept up, and kept advancing. This is the reality of the war on the front lines. Russia is winning, dominating, prevailing. The Ukrainians don't have a solution. They're out of infantry. They were trying to replace it by throwing 80,000 drone operators in there to get the drone wall, but they're losing 80 to 100 of them a day. They're irreplaceable. The drone factories, meanwhile, what Putin talked about, you hit us, we take you out. Lindsey Graham was just in Kiev. He's passed, but there was a photograph of him smiling, holding a Ukrainian drone. Hey, I got a drone here. Look how good I am. I'm wonderful. That factory no longer exists. Now, it's probably because somebody on Lindsey Graham's team made a mistake or the Russian AI looked at the photographs that Lindsey Graham published and was able to identify through their photo database exactly the place where this was. But they took it out. It no longer exists. All those drones that were being built, all of them stacked up, they're gone, ladies and gentlemen, finished. And that's not the only drone factory that's taken out. Every major drone factory in Ukraine is being taken out as we speak. Think about it. You want to build a Patriot assembly plant in Ukraine?
Yeah.
2,000 square feet of new construction. You don't think the Russians are going to detect?
See that, right?
Russia is destroying the totality of Ukraine's industrial infrastructure. There's nothing that can replace it. This is the reality.
Yeah, and the last one I want to talk about here because I'm out of a little bit out of time here where I wanted to ask you, but I'm going to go ahead and show you this one. Oh yeah, there's the infamous one of the last. I think that's his last picture ever seen. Not something that'll go down well in history. But speaking of Lindsey Graham, Michael McCall, Representative McCall, was kind of trying to give a not pep talk, say something nice about him. But he's going to now says, I'm going to take what he was going to do, and we're going to carry it forward to the demise of Russia.
We were planning to introduce a sanction bill together this coming week. I will still introduce that bill. The Senate will. And I think in his honor that we owe it to Lindsey Graham to pass that tough Russian sanctions bill. I have to say also, the NATO summit had a big impression on Ukraine. Zelensky was very upbeat because two things happened there. One, President Trump agreed to these licensing agreements so that Ukraine can build their own interceptor, Patriot interceptors, to take down the ballistic missile threat, which is their biggest vulnerability right now. But secondly, I think most importantly, the morale boost. As I was on the front lines, the morale boost to the troops who are, by the way, Martha, winning now. Who would have thought that 4 years ago, that they'd be winning the war 4 years later? But also the political will of the Ukrainians and President Zelensky walking out of that meeting, that was a game changer.
A game changer. And McCall was on the front lines, and the Ukraine side is winning. I probably don't need to ask, but I'm going to give you the chance anyway. What do you say to that?
Horse hockey. I think that's a term that we're allowed to use. Horse manure, cow dung. He's Texas, I think he's from, so he'll understand these terms. He's a liar, straight up liar. The licensing agreement isn't going to happen. First of all, there's only one missile that has a chance of shooting down an Iskander-M, and that's the PAC-3 MES, I think it is. Ukraine will never assemble that. Hell, we have trouble assembling here in the United States. We're talking about pumping up the production rate from 600 to 2,000. We don't have enough parts. We don't have enough seekers. We don't have enough anything. So the idea that we're suddenly going to divert all this, subcomponent capacity to Ukraine to watch it get blown up by a Russian counterstrike is absurd. There will be, we may ship some Patriot MES missiles to Ukraine. They'll be blown up before they get put into operation. But the missile that they're looking at is a PAC-2 GEMT, sort of an improved PAC-2. It can't shoot down the Iskander. It can't shoot down the Kinzhal. It can't shoot down, the Zircon. It can't shoot down. Nothing can shoot down the Oreshnik. So it's basically going in to shoot down some cruise missiles, and that's it. Right now, Germany has a licensing agreement to produce these missiles in Germany. The first missiles should come off the production line by the end of this year. The best Ukraine's going to get is to get Germany to divert some of this production to Ukraine. But again, these are missiles that don't solve the operational problem. The problem is Iskander-M's. Ukraine has nothing to shoot down an Iskander-M. They will never shoot them down. The problem is Zircons. They can't shoot them down. The problem is Kinzhals. They can't shoot them down. They're not going to get the weapons to shoot them down. And the thing is, Zelensky knows this. He was sat there. Trump blew some smoke at him in Ankara, and Zelensky smiled. But now Zelensky's running around in a panic saying, you need to follow through on this. We need these missiles. And he's realizing that in the best case, if everything works properly, you're not even going to be able to turn ground for, a year or more. I mean, the licensing alone, there's just steps that by law have to go through, quality control checks and things of that nature that just aren't in place. Not going to happen. The German facility was broken ground on 2022. It's now 2027, and they may produce a missile by the end of 2027. That's 5 years. You might be able to accelerate this for Ukraine for like 3 years, but that's it. And that means that if the war stopped today and everything was allowed to happen, Ukraine wouldn't be able to assemble a missile for 3 years. Zelensky realizes that's not good enough. So now he's running around and, McCall, a morale booster. This is devastating for the Ukrainians because the Ukrainians that understand they've been abandoned, that they were lied to. Zelensky's starting to panic. And that goodwill that Trump had towards him, because Trump is a very shallow man, that goodwill will dissipate the moment Zelensky starts to call him out and say, you promised me something and you're failing to deliver. Trump's going to say how ungrateful you are. Remember that Oval Office meeting that took place back in August of 2024? Or 2025, you're going to see that again. This is absurd. McCall's a moron. He's an idiot. He's stupid. He's criminal. And sadly, it's going to cost the American taxpayer, billions of dollars. But worse, it's going to cost Ukraine millions of lives because extending this war along the lines being proposed by McCall, injecting false hope into, a situation that can't be won, can't be recovered, is just going to require, it's going to result in the death of the Ukrainians and literally the physical destruction of the Ukrainian nation. Vladimir Putin's already talking about, Sumy being a Russian city, Kharkiv a Russian city, Odessa. We're not talking about simply buffer zones here. We're talking about a reclassification of what Novorossiya is, new Russian territories are. These are Russian cities. They will be part of Russia in a post-conflict, which means Ukraine's getting smaller and smaller and smaller as we speak.
Yeah, and I don't see anything on the battlefield that's going to prevent that from happening. Even if it takes a lot longer, there's just not the assets on the Ukrainian side or on the American side to go along with it. Listen, I'll have to cut it short right now. I actually have to go and talk to Stas Krapivnik, who's told me, just sent me a text and said to tell you hi and to give you his regards. But we appreciate you coming on today very much and sharing both these things. It's been really an illuminating show altogether. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.